Welcome, pudding people, to another episode of Everybody Loves Pudding. I am your host, Ken Seymour, and I have to tell you, I am absolutely giddy today. We have a fantastic guest to speak with. She is an actress that you've seen her in so much stuff, you've either seen her or you've heard her in so much stuff. She's been on stage, she's been on screen, television, movies. She is Janet Varney. Thank you so much for coming on the show with us today.
My pleasure, Ken. Hello, pudding people.
Yes,
I just
they're
wanted
out
to hear
there.
myself say that. Pudding people. It's so satisfying.
I'm really wanting to get that endorsement from Hunts. That's on
Uh-huh.
the agenda.
Yeah. Let's
We'll
make
see
it
what comes.
happen.
Jello, possibly. I always like to start kind of simply. I kind of you've been one of my favorite people to follow, just because I like following people that come from a similar time frame. I'm in that age right now where I go, that person's my age, or that person's close to my age. They are doing quite well. How they do that? So I like to start with, okay, what got you into the industry? I saw that you were a salutatorian in high school, and then you kind of progressed into what was interior design. How do you go from interior design to acting?
Yeah, well, I mean, I definitely did the school plays and stuff when I was a kid. So there are people that, I went to elementary school, grade school, junior high with, even high school with, who maybe I lost touch with. And if we reconnect, they are like, I see you always were very driven in theater, and like here you did it. And then I feel like, I the temptation to say, no, no, there was a giant chunk of my life where that was not a priority for me at all, and I was doing all this other stuff. So in terms of like people's paths wending back and forth and all over the place until you sort of end up perhaps where you were always meant to. I don't know if that's a thing, but if you were trying to make that argument, I feel like my story would be a decent story to tell with regards to that. Because yeah, I definitely thought, for a long time. But like it was very abstract to me. I mean, I know people who knew that they wanted to be actors and really did, like graduated from college, immediately moved to Hollywood, immediately, they were busting their hump to get whatever they could, get seen, take comedy classes, that kind of thing. And that wasn't me. So I'm not a great example when I'm like, well, people are like, how did you do it? I'm like, well, first you need to not know what you want to do with your life. If you could go ahead and go to an in-state school and then throw away your full ride scholarship to move to San Francisco, if you could go ahead and establish yourself a year of residency there so you can continue to go to school, self-paying all the way. I would love for you to have a couple of identity crises in there, spend a lot of time in retail, then move into interior design, then do some modeling that you're sort of ashamed by just because you feel like that was like you're supposed to be using your brain more when you're doing that stuff, but that is so bullshit. Like models can be wonderful and smart and bright. That is a self-ashame thing that is stupid. And then like be in a band, and then eventually have friends from college coax you into doing a sketch troupe that you never thought that you would do, and then you're good. So that's the ingredients. Good
Yeah,
luck.
it's kind of surprising how those sentiments are actually echoed by a great number of people.
Yeah.
Um, I actually saw you speak at an expo in Cleveland here not too long ago, and one
Sure.
of the other guests that was there was Mark Shepard, and
Uh-huh.
he echoed almost identical sentiments to that. It's like, yeah, there's no reason that I should be in this industry. It just kind of happened, but
Yeah.
that kind of a thing. But the real question I often have in instances where this is not your plotted plan, this just kind of organically grew out of where you were taking your life.
Hmm.
The you that was before the acting, was there anything about the process of making film or television that would have surprised the you before acting once you got into actually doing it?
Oh, sure. Okay, yeah. So like actually doing it for a living, being down in LA and having auditioning sort of be your job. Um versus being in the real world. Yeah, I mean, I had that experience just auditioning for stuff when I was in the comedy group in San Francisco with my buddies, and we got scouted for like the Aspen Comedy Festival and went to that, and then I started getting, when you go there again, it's like, and that is also very arbitrary. Like you're good enough to get that opportunity, but then after that, you don't know. And I happened to um, kind of click with a manager who wanted me to come down and leaving the world of like San Francisco producing or being a buyer at an interior design store or whatever, and then going down and crashing on my friend's couch and like just trying to find where I was supposed to be and like driving up to a studio and like walking in and showing your ID and going through the gate and like that would be how a day was spent. Like I just had two auditions, but that took me all day because I had to get up, get ready, get those, the first thing prepared. Then you drive across town. That's an hour. Then it takes you an hour just to get inside and like wait and then be seen and come back out. And so that blew my mind, just that it was like it felt like pretend. I mean, it felt like trying out a job that wasn't real. And luckily, because I've always still produced the comedy festival I founded with my two partners, Cole and David, I always had an anchor to come back to at least part of the year where, that's our festival. We know how to program it. We buy the insurance. We buy the toilet paper for the bathrooms. Like we did everything back in the day. So that I think kept me using my brain. And then also just being in this community of people, like various communities, but improv and comedy and people who are making stuff. They want to make stuff, whether or not someone is letting them make stuff. But all of it was surprising to me. All of it was kind of like, some of it felt like you're in a movie, like this is the movie version of an actor's life, but wow, it's shocking that it kind of is that and is aptly represented. And then I think I also wasn't like, I hadn't given full credit to how many brilliant people live here, because when you're in San Francisco or Chicago or New York, there are a lot of cities that love to snub LA and love to be really shitty about LA. Sorry, I won't curse either, but
Oh,
that
you're
love to
just
be
fine.
catty about it. And I was one of those people. And there's plenty to make fun of about Los Angeles for sure, but when you realize the per capita amount of just really creative, sincere, funny, neat people who are, who just want to make stuff and have ideas and they want to work together. They want to be in like a summer camp, but all the time. That's really inspiring. I mean, it can be intimidating, but it's you really, I think there's an energy to that, and that's then, and if you can find that and you can tap into it in some way, I think it does sort of keep you going and push you forward even when it's hard.
Just kind of like a pool of joy that you can access and you're trying to share with other people.
Yeah. And then, conversely, like when things are hard, you're going to have a ton of people who can relate to that. At any given time, no one is doing so perfect, and you're the only one who's not going through something. It's like at any given time, some of your friends are having like the peaks of their careers, and some of your friends are, have not worked forever. And I'm including, actors, writers, editors, teachers, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. And so I don't ever feel like you can sort of get caught in that pattern of like comparing yourself to more successful people. But I think if you start to go down that road and then you think about just grab a group of people in your mind and think, oh, we're all at such different places emotionally right now, and we all you kind of trade back
Mhm.
and forth, and I think that can be this support um, when the pool of joy feels like it's a little, droughty.
Yes, we I know that feeling well, that drought feeling. So, okay, some people that I've talked to have had this moment, some haven't. But did you have just the "I've made it" moment? So you finally got onto whatever show or whatever production, whether it's actually you've made it or not, but you got
Yeah.
that feeling. It's like, oh, this is me, this is what I'm supposed to be, and had that just kind of giddy reaction.
I mean, I would say, and I suspect that I speak for many performers when I say that I have had that feeling many times, which means that that feeling also goes away. So you can have it, and then, 6 months later, you're like, oh no, 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 I don't know why I thought that. Like, that was a fun moment, but mm-mm. So that's kind of a roller coaster as well. But I would say, with that in mind, I definitely have, I guess, some version of that. And it's usually, I don't know, I guess, not to be totally cheesy, but I think I kind of feel those moments in smaller ways and in smaller points. Like, nothing makes me feel like I've made it more than having a conversation with somebody at a con who, watched something that I was in and during a really hard time for them. And that feels like, oh, okay. But I feel like the thing I'm getting from that is so similar to what my dad as a high school teacher experienced at the end of the year when a student came up and said, Mr. Varney, you were my favorite teacher. You really made me love Shakespeare. And, I'm excited to go to college and I didn't feel that way before. That's not dissimilar. Like, to me, those things have the same value. Whether or not what I did was seen by more people at once, who cares?
Mm.
So I think those are the feelings. But every once in a while, there's a feeling when you go onto a lot and someone, points at a studio and is like, that's where Charlie Chaplin filmed The Tramp. And you're like, oh, I'm a part of history. I try to, in fact, that's a great example. That is a great example. When I first got to tour the Henson Company, because I had met at a comedy festival, had met the sort of longtime head of PR there, who was, just like part of every remote shoot that Henson Puppets were doing. We really hit it off, and she asked me to come. And that was definitely a moment, like walking onto that lot and seeing this big Kermit, and he's wearing Charlie Chaplin clothes because that is the old Charlie Chaplin studio, which is what made me think of it. That really felt like, I think, it's that stuff that when you're connecting with a kid in you, where you're like, oh my gosh, if I could tell every year up to this point age me that, I would be having this conversation and like eventually meet Brian Henson and all of that kind of stuff, that would have felt like whatever I did to get here, great,
I I kind of feel like that sometimes, as the people that consume the media more than not, we don't, there's a barrier. I mean, yes, we get to enjoy the product of what is made, but we don't get to kind of get the feeling of what it is to put it together. That's in my mind how I'm thinking things. But then at that same expo, watching you do the panel when the sound system was not cooperating,
uh-huh.
and you were still just kind of still maintaining it, and you had people getting in line over and over again to continue to ask you questions. It just, at that point, it's like, well, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
You just kind of, no matter what, you've managed to make the difference in somebody's life. That is amazing. Do you get that a lot on the convention circuit? Because you go to a lot of conventions. How many do you think you go to in a given year?
um I mean, I definitely have friends who do more, who seem like they're just gone every weekend, and that's not me. I feel like like a sweet spot for me in terms of like how much I would be traveling and stuff would be like one every 2 months, which is only six. I think sometimes there are a couple that crop up that end up being more than that, but I don't think I do. I don't think I do more than maybe six. But if I like count in my head what I've done this year, that might be more. But that's also because post COVID, we're
Right.
all so hungry to just be with people again. But yeah, so I do, and I do, and that's why I go. I mean, it truly, truly is, and I don't feel like I've ever taken it for granted. It is exhausting. There's no way around saying that it's not exhausting, but it is exhausting because I'm utterly present, and I really want to take in and make room for like every positive experience, and also, people who do feel like, there's something either in my work or in stuff I've disclosed because I'm a super oversharer, that made them feel better. Yeah, I mean, I just want to show up for that, and it's those are the moments. Again, like my mom passed away in February of 2021, and like those are the moments I think to myself, or sometimes I even talk to her. I'm like, oh, ma'am, if you could see, like this is why you were a teacher. She was also a teacher. Like this exchange. If there's some version of you or some like sparks of energy that exist that represent you in some way in the grand consciousness of being a human being, I don't know, but like she never got to see any of those moments, but I would love for her to see those moments, just because that is the kind of thing that you feel like people should be proud of you. Again, not like, not being like, oh, I saw you on a billboard. Like my mom would not give a crap about that. She would be like, oh, that's neat. But she would be like, oh, that's kind of
Right.
neat. But like, that's a feeling that's just very fleeting. But if she saw some of the exchanges I've had with people who love the same stuff I do, because, I got to be in stuff I love. So I love talking about it. And saw that, she would definitely be like, ah, okay, like you're doing something. You've done something. And so that's really important to me.
So in the conventions that you go to, again, because the vast majority of us will only ever be on one side of it when we go to the convention. Is there anything about being part of a convention that the average attendee would not expect, or maybe something that they should know that would not only maybe make their enjoyment of it better, but also make it easier for everyone to give them the experience that they want, that you sometimes may not expect?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I mean, the thing that sort of popped into my mind, which probably won't, maybe it won't surprise anybody, but when you go back in the green room, and you have the opportunity. I've never. I mean, I don't know some of like the big legend iconic folks. Like, I don't know William Shatner, so I can't speak for him, but I have borne witness to so many people fanning out on each other in the green rooms. So that never goes away. I mean, I was with I'm trying to remember which voiceover person it was, but it was like one of the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, just, beloved, like any one of those guys, Cam Clark or Rob Paulson, let's say. But just like people who, just have lines of people who are like, you were my childhood, man. You're amazing. Like, I love you. And I'm sitting with him and he's like, I'm sorry, I have to go tell Rupert Friend how much I love him. I can't not. I don't want to bother him, but I can't not. And that's even a generational thing where like the older guy was super fanning out on the younger guy and went over there, and then they just were, hanging out and talking, and like, he came back and was just like, he's so nice, he's so cool. And that is the mirror image of what is happening on the other side of those, particle boards or whatever that they put up. And then also like the people really do. Again, I'm very lucky because I feel like the group that of people that my particular booking agents represent is just, they're just so lovely. But even people I don't know, I always hear, and I'm always part of conversations where people are like, look at this thing that this person made for me. Or, they're wiping away a tear like, oh, I really couldn't keep it together out there. That I had I just had one of those fans who, really like had a story to tell. And so like it's happening. It's real. It's not a facade. It's not like, hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm hearing you, and then you walk away and you're forgotten. It's just not like that. At least not in the experiences I've had with other people. So if people are, if anyone wonders, like, oh, I felt like, Grey Delisle was really nice to me, but I don't know, maybe that's just like she's an actor, she's getting paid to be here or whatever. Um, not that's not been my experience at all. And I would say if someone was kind of short with you, like they either might have had, a hard day, or maybe they are kind of a dick. But the people who are nice, they're not faking it. Like that's totally real. And again, it's just great to see, and it's so fun to see people nerd out on each other. It's just the best.
Yeah, I still I will tell the story many times, but the same company that ran that um, expo in Cleveland, had attended that previously, and the focus on the previous time was Smallville. So
Oh, sure.
that was like my show. I love that. I got to meet these people and see what. And that was the first year I was doing the podcast. So it's like, yeah, come on over and you can cover it and talk to some of the people. And you know, I like to think that I am sometimes witty, maybe not always,
Uh-huh.
but um, there was just an instance where they had done the panel and everybody was leaving. With your panel, they kind of ushered you behind closed doors, and you went down the back hallway, and you didn't have to necessarily run into anybody.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, they
but
do that too to just like get you back to the table because there's usually people waiting there who left
right,
early. You know what I mean? So, because
exactly.
otherwise you'll be there, and I'm interested to see where the story's going because you could end up being there an hour and then the con is like, you've messed up our entire schedule.
Right.
Like,
Well, Tom Welling was a member of that panel along with everybody else. He left through the audience and went out the main portion of the thoroughfare. And I hadn't seen this as first. And I was walking up the steps, and then there's Tom Welling. I go, oh, I have 2 seconds. Make an impression, make him laugh.
yeah.
Maybe something will go well. And I'm thinking about it's like, what am I going to say? And before I'm ready, out of my mouth goes, well, why don't you just fly up the stairs? What?
Uh-huh.
Where did that come from? And dude just took it in strides, like, and just it's like, you are a gentleman, sir, because that was the
Yeah.
stupidest thing that I could ever have possibly said. And hopefully he will have forgotten it. And
Oh, again, we all have those moments. Like I just got to take a picture with Mick Foley, and he,
that was so cool.
was well, and it was, but like the way it had been described to me was like he knows who you are, you know who he is. He loves having been part. He talks about having been the boulder on Avatar all the time. Like he's super excited. Whatever that was, I don't know where it came from because when I went in they like pulled me into his booth while he was signing and I was like, I don't want to, but they're waiting. And like, and then he was just like, hello, like, who are you? And I was like, hey, Mick, I'm Janet. I play Korra in The Legend of Korra, and I have a podcast with Dante Bosco. We talk about, it's doing extraordinarily well. We just talked about your episode. Like, I hear you're a fan. He was like, oh yeah, it's great. Yeah, I love that show. Would you like to take a picture? And I was like, oh my gosh. Like I would never have gone in had I wouldn't have never interrupted his sign. You know what I mean? Like the whole
Right.
thing, I was just sort of plonked down in the middle of his world and like there was zero time and I was like, yes. And like he was totally lovely, but that was not the exchange I was expecting at all. And so I fully had the experience of being like, okay, well, you don't know who I am, and thanks for being a good sport about that. I'm gonna go ahead and post it and act like we're friends. Goodbye.
Now, were you a wrestling fan at all before this? Were
I gotta be honest, I wasn't really. I mean, I definitely had fans who were super into it, and they were fans that I love. Like, there were people in my life that I loved who were super nerdy and also played D&D and stuff. So, like, I absolutely had the understanding of kind of where pro wrestling can fit into like other things that people love. But yeah, it was not. It was never something that anyone even put in front of me.
if you've ever, well, I'm sure you've had several friends and associates that have been on the stunt side of film to make sure
Yeah,
that all of the actors can maintain life and limb and, and
sure.
continue
Yeah,
from scene to scene. The
yeah.
stuff that he would do just from day to day was
Oh my gosh.
amazing. I still don't know how he survived so many of those. I mean, yeah, okay, staged, but when you go 20 feet down, even through a prefab trick table,
Oh yeah.
that's gonna hurt.
Oh yeah, it's intense. It's intense. Well, yeah, and then later, in my more recent life, my friend, dear friend Hal, does a great podcast called Tights and Fights, and they talk about wrestling. And I got to do an episode and like really drilled down into some specific characters. And then I got to have Colt Cabana on my podcast and just fell
Oh,
completely in
cool.
love with him. And also like had like a growing understanding from being a kid all the way through now of just like how dynamic and how charismatic and how talented pro wrestlers who, whether they decide to stay in the wrestling world or do pull a rock or come out of it, Dave Bautista to me is the funniest thing in Guardians of the Galaxy. Like he is extraordinarily funny and so talented. And, it's just another example. There it is. I love raccoons so much. Yeah, so like, there's no shade on not having watched wrestling, but
It's different. I kind of, it's not a great likening, that's for sure. But it's similar to theater in the sense that, when you're putting together a television show or a movie, well, the camera's going to be on you where you need to be. On stage, you need to affect people really far away.
sure.
And that to me is a skill that still just mystifies you. Not only do you need to do that, but do it while getting hit repeatedly.
Of course. And also, whatever you're doing in your free time is probably like you're working out. You know what I mean? You're eating a certain way. I mean, it's a full-time job to just do that, to just stay in that shape, much less to then go on a stage and entertain millions of people.
Now, just from talking about this, your interactions with briefly with Mick Foley, and so you've managed to be in a position to touch on so many niche kind of pop culture pools of fun. Is there any one of these that you've run up against that you didn't expect to really, really like, but oh, it's like I had no idea this existed. This
Yeah.
is amazing.
That's a great question. I'm trying to think. I mean, I don't know if I was surprised by it, so I can't really say it's that, but it was really fun to kind of come to understand uh from my first time being on site just how devoted a fan base that is and how just beloved that show is. Um and I knew it was great and I was so honored to be a part of it and then to be invited back with like some of the like greatest hits in my opinion of the of that, and like knowing James and like staying in touch with everybody and becoming friends and getting close with Omenson and just an amazing group of people. And I love that they are so fantastic and that they have fans who are smart and funny and weird and clever and devoted and really that was very cool. That was very that's a great fandom. I'm always so impressed by the psych fandom.
Well, I have to admit that they had an amazing run with a great cast and so much. I mean, I have yet to meet Timothy, and he's one on my list. Like this guy
Yeah.
is just amazing. Being a huge dork for Supernatural, seeing him have
Oh,
not
sure.
not a large part on that, but a very very important part
Yes.
was so much fun. But truthfully, Gallivant. I mean, just him and
Yeah.
Gallivant was just too
Yeah.
much. I still have the drunken singing "We're going to sneak out and do stuff" song going through my head at least once every couple of weeks, and just
Yeah.
just amazing. Um,
Yeah, he's the best.
yeah, it you have you have a lot of minutia that you pick up. Is there any piece of a show or production that you did that will just kind of pop out of you every once in a while and you go, where did that come from?
Oh, I mean, I know I'm hugely influenced by stuff I like and stuff I get to do. Um, I mean, I definitely, I'm trying to think of, I mean, I definitely feel like I'm more like Jimmy Pardo now than I was before we became friends. Like he is a very distinct personality. You know, Paul F. Tompkins is the same way. People like that that I've been lucky enough to spend a lot of time with, you know, both doing stuff and in friend life. And although I would say like nobody ever sees that much of each other in LA. It's always like, we're doing a work thing. That counts as hanging out. Hooray! Now I'll go back into my little den, which is very much me. Um, like I mean, I know I already have a really specific laugh that is like the laugh I've always had, but I now also have outburst laugh that I'm positive just like osmosis in from Jimmy. So that was kind of the thing that sprung to mind when you said that. Just like I'm pretty sure now I go, ha ha, in a way that like 100% was, you know, I did not was not on purpose, but it's in there.
Well, as long as you make the face that he makes when he does that laugh at the same time, because he's always got that leaning forwarding with
Yes.
the forehead that what he does at the same
I
time.
hope I do. I hope I do. I hope I'm honoring that.
Well, speaking of honoring things that are important, don't forget, dear folks, like that segue. I'm going straight
It's
into it.
fantastic. Do
Okay.
it.
Now, I like to remind people that listen to us on Spotify, on Apple Music, that have not taken the time to visit our website to definitely go ahead and do so. Of course, you can find out amazing people that we're going to be talking to, like Janet Varney. We've got our whole schedule coming up, but there's more. There's so much more. Have you ever thought to yourself watching Avengers Endgame, how many people died in this film?
Oh.
We'll tell you. Moment by moment. We have our entire
Ah.
pop culture kill count, television shows, movies. We got it all on there. We have the ultimate comic movie database. Every film based on a comic strip, comic book, all cross referenced for your deep dive
That's
and rabbit
huge.
holing. And
Fabulous.
we have a lot of fun with that. And by fun, I mean lots of hard work that we hope other people will enjoy. But
I bet they will.
yeah, so now that's out of the way. Get back to the important stuff. So, okay. So, comedians have always also been something both my co host, who is unfortunately not here with me today due to some scheduling conflicts, but uh, we have, just continually talked about who we think are our favorites, are our best. You've been in and around comedy a long time. Who are your inspirational figures within the realm of comedy?
Like but that I don't know, people who I was like enamored of when I was younger and stuff,
Oh, yeah,
like role
absolutely.
models and stuff.
Or
Um
currently.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm really lucky. My dad's super funny. He introduced me to a lot of stuff that he loved when I was really little. He was very much there to watch Sesame Street with me, and you know, like we had a very engaged um TV relationship in terms of, you know, there was just a lot of stuff that we liked watching together, which I think was really nice to have that bond. So, you know, again, like anything Muppets related, and then all of the people who sort of showed up in and around the Muppets, like Bernadette Peters or Steve Martin or Martin Short, the women in Mel Brooks's movies like Madeline Kahn and Terry Garr. Terry Garr was a real big one for me, especially like after Tootsie and just feeling like, oh, I'm like a cute kind of cutish blondish kid and like girl, and somehow, you know, she's so funny, but there's, you know, she's got these very very funny mannerisms and stuff, but she's still a person when she's acting. And I don't know, I really really love Terry Garr. So she was a big one. And but yeah, like all the you know, I love like Savage Steve Holland movies. You know, I loved Better Off Dead. I was like obsessed with Better Off Dead, and
Nice.
I kind of still am. And you know, like One Crazy Summer, and just stuff where he was just doing stuff that, you know, he's one of those people that you're sort of like, oh, movies can be like this. Like you can just do that. That doesn't make any sense at all. Cool, you know. So that was, I think, the sense of the absurd, and then, you know, and then Kids in the Hall. And it's so cool that like so many of these people are still around doing stuff, being awesome. You know, that were such influences. So that was like kind of, the stuff that I think I really have always loved. And I used to talk about this with the Sklar brothers all the time because we did this web series like right when I first moved here, called Back on Tops, which actually is something I'm so proud of. And I don't think people know about it or see it. It is so funny and it's so good. And they had such an amazing cast. And there and the, my biggest compliment with something is often me like laughing and going, "That's so stupid. This is so stupid." But it's a very specific kind of stupid. Like you have to know, and this is very Steve Martin, but like to be at a level where something about you is like intellectually and artistically elevated, but you're able to do something that's just so stupid.
Mm.
That's just the best. Like it's the high meets low, I think, that I've always really, really loved. I think a lot of us are like that. But there's also like, there's varying levels of that. Everybody's got their own level of like, is your favorite high meets low something? There's something about Mary. To me, the Farrelly brothers are like more sort of low meets low, but they're still very charming. They're
Right.
very funny. But what's the balance for everybody? And it's different for everybody. But you know,
Yeah, the to be able to operate at the level of excellence that he's been operating at for forever now
yeah,
is kind of amazing.
yeah,
But what about current day? What comedians tickle your funny bone now? Do you get a chance? I mean, because you organize the event,
yeah.
so I assume that you get to see the talent that you bring in and see new fresh faces and people returning and go, oh, this person's going to be really, really big. I could tell very
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yes, for sure. I mean, there's always people that, whether they're brand new or whether I'm trying to think of anybody I've seen that's brand new. It's definitely COVID time still in the
right.
sense of like, we booked a whole festival and then we couldn't do it. So we had to pick it up and just move it a year forward. So hopefully it will happen in 2023 in January. But but yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like there are definitely people that I am a huge fan of. There's a comedian named Nori Reed, and I just love her. I just can't get enough. I just think she's so wonderful and so funny. And if you want to know who I like, it's like probably paging through my podcast episodes is a good sign because I that's a way to muscle in. You know what I'm talking about, Ken. You know what I'm talking about.
Yes,
It
I
is
do.
a great way to get to know someone, that you're like, I love you, please, like, let me talk to you about things. Guy Burnham, I've always loved. Joel Kim Booster, I love. Aparna Nancherla, I love. Naomi Ekperigin, I love. They all and they all know and love each other. So I guess there's like sort of Joe Firestone, I love. Um, but I also love, like, I don't know, am I thinking specifically about their actual stand-up sets, or am I thinking about them as human beings or improvisers or podcasters? That tends to be, I think, more my cup of tea. Like, I really respect stand-up and I like it a lot. And everyone I named has brought something to stand-up that I find so original and unique and strange and funny, and that's what makes it so special. Um, but uh but if someone says, do you want to go to an improv show or a stand-up show, I will go to the improv show.
That's a
And
lot.
that's saying a lot, and that's taking a much bigger risk
Well,
because
I was going to
that
say
improv is
that's
really
hard.
painful. That
That
improv's really painful. But but great improv is, to me, as electrifying as anything I can see and experience. Whereas great stand up, I'm always sort of aware that I mean, it's brilliant. Like Patton Oswalt, he works so hard to sound like he's coming up with stuff off the cuff, and it's he's a genius.
yeah.
Um, but I, coming from improv and knowing what it feels like to get that high when you're on stage, when something happens that's perfect, that was completely unplanned, that to me is like lightning in a bottle. That's the like, oh god, that was so great, oh my god, that's so great, and so as a fan, I love getting to be privy to those moments. But it's also hard because if you love improv and you love what you're seeing on stage, you're like, oh, I wish I could play. Like, you get little ants in your pants. But like, that's how we all are with podcasts now. Like, we all listen to podcasts and we're like, oh, I wish I could say something right now. I can't say something. This is a conversation that's already happened.
I it may sound strange, but maybe my favorite thing about comedy, I'm always going to have the comedians that I've liked and have continued to like. My favorite thing is finding a comedian that I just absolutely don't get. It's just not for me. And then they make something and I go, Oh,
Huh?
well, this is different and
Yeah.
amazing. They got most recently like the Bo Burnham
I knew
Insight
you were going
special.
to say Bo Burnham. I don't know why, but I absolutely knew you were going to say Bo Burnham.
I did not like
Yeah.
his earlier work. It just
Yeah.
never hit me. It wasn't my
Yeah.
area. But that was just amazing. I
Yeah.
still I don't even have words to really describe
Yeah.
it. Tell everybody
He's,
about it.
yeah, he's a very, I mean, gosh, he's been doing it so long too for how young he is. I remember when he came on the scene, it was like, "You're 12. What are you doing? How is this happening? What is your brain made of? Let me get a peek in there."
What's
Yeah.
YouTube?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
um so okay, so in your experience, have you okay, I'm sorry. I'm trying to think three things at the same time, and clearly this is not going to
Oh my
work.
gosh, I do that all the time, so no problem.
Okay, in shows that you've been a part of, who has been your favorite person to follow? Let us say.
Like shows I've been a part of, like to see what they've done after the thing
Right.
I worked on them with or
Exactly.
worked with
Exactly.
on them.
To
What? I
follow
can't
and
say
kind of
words.
track their progress and just see what's happened.
Oh my gosh. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Boy, that's a great question. Oh, now this is a like I've gotten been lucky to work with too many amazing people, so I'm completely drawing a blank. Um, oh gosh, I mean, if I start going through the Rolodex in my mind of people, the problem is that I just love a lot of people and I don't like picking favorites. Um,
Yeah, I understand.
well, I'll say this. I'll give an example. This is somebody that like I sort of came full circle with in a sense, but when I did Burning Love, Colton Dunn just had like a little something something to do in that where he played like a medic, and I just thought he was so funny, and he I think had he was definitely a UCB guy and was definitely like already getting ready to write on Key and Peele or was writing on Key and Peele, but I just didn't have a whole lot of like personal experience performing with him, and so but I just he just stood out to me because I knew I was familiar with everybody else that was on the show, for the most part, and because I wasn't working with him that much, and when he would come in and he would just make me die laughing, I just thought he was so funny and great. So it was really cool to like, then see him showing up on stuff and work and writing on Key and Peele and writing these different places and just being so freaking talented, and then getting to do the improvised space kind of comedy podcast I did with him called Voyage to the Stars was such a pleasure to get to just record with him every week, and see him on Superstore and see how much people love him. And so he's a good example of somebody that I met many many years ago and was like he just struck me so quickly, and I was a fan so quickly, and so it's been really great seeing like all the different stuff that he's been involved in, and getting a chance to know him and work with him has been really cool, and I know he's going to keep doing amazing stuff.
That's those little things that you accumulate over time, those relationships and those interactions. uh I would assume, I would feel like that would just be a bolster that would allow you in your moments, because I'm sure you don't have very many of them where you have just some peace
Tons.
to
Oh,
think.
peace to think. Yeah.
To be able to fall back on and just like, yeah, that was pretty sweet. So, okay, if I didn't talk about Legend of Korra, I think at least one of my sons would probably strangle me.
We do not
Um,
want that to happen at all.
no, it happens regularly, but I'll deal with it. Um, I wanted to know something very specific. Whenever you're doing voice work as opposed to doing live recordings, it occurs to me that maybe the process of being directed would potentially be different.
Mhm.
Is there a different feel between those two environments, and what is it?
Yeah.
What's it like?
Oh gosh, it's like worlds different. I mean, it's incredibly different. It's incredibly different. Um, yeah, I mean, the whole experience of shooting something on camera is, there's so many people involved and there's so much going on, and you're seeing the sausage get made. So sorry I use that analogy, but you're seeing a lot of what happens in the moment. Um, that doesn't mean that there's not a whole other world that goes into post production, because there absolutely is. But you are definitely seeing the grips and the electrics setting up. You're seeing the camera guys. You're seeing it all. And that's one of the things I love about that environment. And then when you're recording voiceover, I mean, you're basically with one engineer. If you're lucky, you're with some of the cast, and then you might have a writer, the creators, and then you have your voice director. So it's just this very small, quiet space. And so it's a completely different experience. And there's also like a technical aspect to it. I mean, it's not often that, I mean, certainly there's lots of technical stuff about like finding your mark and all that, and like don't hit your mic and all that when you're shooting on camera. But just there's everything has to come through your voice. So having a vocal director like someone like Andrea Romano, who can read with you and be brilliant, and also has over the years come up with a vocabulary that enables her to so easily communicate like these tiny changes that need to happen, in a way that's both respectful and to the point, because you don't have she doesn't have time to like coddle someone. So somehow she got really good, and I've used this example before, but somehow she's really good at being like, hearing a lot of spit in your voice, a lot of spit in your voice. Go ahead and take a drink of water. You know what I mean? And you're just like, cool, cool, cool. A lot of spit in my voice. Like, I'm going to just like let that wash over me, so to speak, and we'll move on. So to be able to just articulate something like that immediately and not have to be like, how do I put this? First of all, you're doing great. Like, no, she's going to just like say, this is the thing that we need to fix. Let's fix it and move on. So it's a very, very different experience. I love them both for different reasons, and I would hate to stop doing either. But I also totally understand people who are like, oh yeah, I started doing voiceover and I was like, I'm never going back. I love showing up and being in my pajamas, or whatever the cliche we all use is. And to have that ability to like do all these different voices and stuff, and not be just like known for being this one thing, or what your face looks like or whatever. But I love the physicality of shooting on camera too. I just love that it gives you something different. So they're both wonderful, but they are very different, and the way you're directed is very, very different.
Now, have you ever taken the opportunity to just mess with the director a little bit, when she gives you that
Wish I could say
direction?
I had that confidence or like George Clooney prankishness to me, but I'm not. I'm like the most mild-mannered voiceover actor compared to some of the legends who have just been doing it forever. I mean, I am still so humble and like, I'm just happy to be here. Please don't fire me. Whereas, Rob Paulson and Maurice LaMarche and Phil Lamar, and, just like Greg Delisle, another fantastic example. People who have been doing it and are just titans in that business, that are just like screwing around with each other and doing different voices and like taking everything. Just the trade is off the tracks, and it's so funny to listen to, but like definitely it's a herd of cats that has to be rounded back up again by the voice director. I don't have that. I'm like not comfortable enough in the space because I'm so wanting to do everything perfectly so I'll get to do more. So yeah, I'm like very unimpish in a way that I'm kind of surprised by. Like, you'd think that I'd be more impish, but I'm
Well, I
totally
was gonna say
not.
it was the improv. I just felt that it might
Yeah.
slip out at some
No,
point.
I mean, yeah, I kind of wish that it did, but I think I become like wanting to be teacher's pet. I think I become like, I want to make sure no one has anything to say to me that's negative, you know.
Yeah, my favorite thing, speaking of my boys, and we tend to, I seem to be under the impression that you at least have some fun and familiarity with gaming. We did our family vacation at Gen Con here not too long
Oh,
ago.
nice. Was it
And
fun? You had a good time?
yeah, it was great. They tried to ditch me whenever possible because I always tried to slip into Harvey Firestein around them. Yeah, why don't we go over and try some of those games over there?
Yeah, I
But
understand why they would
they
perhaps
said
want to, yeah.
embarrassing just a little bit,
Uh-huh.
but
Uh-huh.
that was what I was imagining. It's like you go into I'm spacing the name of the actress, but she was uh she was in Beetlejuice and played the case worker. She had that kind of iconic voice, and
Oh yeah, and then she even had the tracheotomy, like the
right,
smoke
right.
coming.
So yeah, a
Yeah,
little spit in your voice, please clear.
yeah.
It's like, is this
Is this
better?
better? Uh-huh. Yep, absolutely.
That would have been fantastic. But so who would you say is who would you say is somebody you were most surprised to get the chance to work with on a show, whether it be an actor, a director, a writer, that you never thought you would have a chance? Is there anybody that you just kind of managed to be on a project with, and it's like, man, this is like kind of a dream come true, or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean that happens to me all the time. I'm always so excited. I'm a big fan. I'm a fangirl. I'm a person who is a fan of movies and TV and pay attention and paid a lot of attention to it as a younger person. So I constantly feel that way. For sure, Legend of Korra was like that. I mean, that was like a parade of, people I never thought I'd get to work with Clancy Brown. I never thought I would get to work with like Henry Rollins. I never thought I would get to work with J.K. Simmons. I never thought I would get to work. I mean, that list just it will never end. Like it's a never ending list of people who would come in for a day or who would be regular characters that I just felt so incredibly lucky to be alongside.
That would be really cool. I'd love to at some point work with Henry Rollins, but I couldn't believe anything he said, so I don't know how well that would go. That is a for our listeners that are younger than myself. That is a music joke. Take
Uh-huh.
a look
Music
at
joke.
the
Yep. Black flag. Yep.
take a look back at the Henry Rollins music collection. You'll eventually
Uh-huh.
get it. But so when you're preparing for this role, I mean, you've got the lead. This is the weight of the series is on your shoulders.
Luckily, I never thought of it that way, or I would have been crushed under my own insecurity.
right.
Uh-huh.
But,
Yep.
taking the series that after an extremely popular and successful Avatar, The Last Airbender, what do you felt was the thing that you did that best helps you prepare for the role?
Oh gosh. I mean, just read the script. I mean that the scripts were so good. There just wasn't a whole lot to worry about other than reading the script and knowing what's happening and coming in prepared. But I can't say that like I'm not a method actor. There are people who have, the things that they do to get certain places. I think, and then there are other actors who, to a fault, have no problem accessing certain things, and that's probably more the category I fall into. Uh, so yeah, I mean, for that, really, it was just like whatever's on the page is so alive that, I don't feel like I'm doing anything but honoring it. I don't feel like I'm, enhancing it even necessarily, just like doing the work and the writing took care of the rest. And then they animated and it's magic.
Yeah, that the style that they used, I it's just so accessible. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Um,
it's great.
and I always love it. Now, more often than not, my co-host and I, we tend to focus more on comic books and comic strips and their specific intersection with film and television. And fairly recently, you were able to voice an iconic DC character uh,
Yeah.
for Injustice. How was that?
That was so cool. I did not audition for that, so that came out of nowhere, and I was like totally floored and so into it. And I mean, it's obviously a very different Superman, different world than non-Injustice DC world, but I really, I mean, I kind of liked how dark it was, and um I just can't believe I got to be Wonder Woman. That was crazy. I mean, I can't. That was yeah. Again, did not take that for granted. Continue to not take that for granted. Like if someone brings me up a Wonder Woman pop to sign, I'm like, are you sure? Do you want to save this for Gal or like any one of the other amazing voiceover actresses who have done it? So yeah, that's continues to be like, what? I got to do what? Oh, heavens. Yeah, that was a real honor for
But
sure.
that wasn't the first comic book film that you were involved with. I seem to remember there was another early in your career, just as a small part that you
As
were
a small
involved.
part? Oh, yeah, party girl. Party girl.
Ah,
Yes.
I love the
What a
description.
gift. Yeah, that was like, I think before I even moved, I either had just moved down here. I'm trying to remember where I drove home to, or had not moved yet, but moved down permanently yet. But yeah, that was a whole thing. Yeah, that was fun. I mean, it was weird. It was like um a very, it's a big budget movie, and I got cut, although my name is in the credits, which is lovely because when
Right.
you're, just getting started, you're like, that still means something. Um, but that was a little bit of like a trial by fire in terms of like just getting dumped into a shoot that was like very like lots of special effects, lots of production stuff, just a lot of moving parts and, shooting all night into the morning. That was wild. But like the coolest thing that came out of that, not that we kept in touch or anything, but that was like the coolest, weirdest thing to happen was like I was sitting on a couch and this guy who came up and was like, hey, like, do you mind if I sit here? My girlfriend's off like getting us some water or whatever. I was like, sure. And he's like, I'm an extra, but I'm not interested in this. This is just something my girlfriend was interested in. And it was a party scene. So she said, like, you do it with me, do it with me. And somehow, in the course of like 3 minutes of conversation, it came to pass that we figured out that he used to live in Tucson, which is the town I'm from. He went to the same elementary school as me. He was in the same class as me. And at a certain point, I was able to lift up my chin and say, you see this scar, Duncan? I got this scar from chasing you, trying to kiss you in first grade. It
That's
was,
awesome.
and but he look. I mean, oh, I've not seen that kid since maybe. I mean, I think he moved away second grade, maybe third grade. But like, I don't. I would never have recognized him. Nothing about him was familiar in any way, shape, or form, and vice versa. So that was like one of the wildest things has ever happened to me. It was
That's
so
great.
random.
Well, the other nice thing that I see about this is, I love seeing anybody that's in the industry that gets to be a part of projects that are just kind of going to be universally remembered for whatever reason.
Uh
So,
huh.
so like, being an injustice, that's really, really popular. But at the same time, Catwoman will always be
Oh
remembered. Maybe
yeah,
not for the best of reasons, but it
that's right.
holds a place.
Yes, it
And,
does hold a place.
and that's nuts to me. I just I love that sort of a thing. If you had a chance in a live action film to play a superhero, who would you be?
Oh, I mean, those are like big, important shoes to fill. So it's really hard, especially thinking about like people who have done such an amazing job. It's hard. It's hard. I mean, I have such admiration for people. I remember I auditioned for one of the many Fantastic Four reboots, whatever the one was that Michael Chiklis was in.
Oh,
Somehow I got like called in for an audition. Again, I had no credits. I mean, I'm just this was like pre Catwoman, even. Not that that changed anything for me, but somehow like I was able to get seen, for that, and I had to audition for the Invisible Woman. And auditioning in a bare room with nothing and like pretending, like I always look at Elizabeth Olsen like bless you because she has one of the hardest, her and like Benedict, you know what I mean? Like they
yeah.
really have to sell something pretty dumb. And I say that as a fan. I say that as a fan of superheroes, but like as an actor, when I see people having to like conjure stuff and like, you know, that is extremely challenging to do with a straight face. So, because you are doing it without the help of the amazing work that goes into, post production and stuff. So, those are things that I feel like I would want to avoid. So maybe something where it's more just that you're looking at something intensely,
Mind
like
powers.
a yeah, like a Jean Grey kind of thing, where maybe you're just like really focused on something and then something happens. Also just like a really interesting, great character.
That's actually really funny. So that, if I remember correctly, that was 2005 was that particular
Yeah,
Fantastic Four, and it was
that sounds
just
right.
Jessica Alba that ended up
Yes.
getting that
Yes.
particular role,
Yes.
which I like Jessica Alba. She's a good actress, but
Yeah.
just from a physical standpoint, you actually look more like the character than she does
Yeah.
by a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that
that's I guess that's true. Yeah.
I could definitely see you doing an Invisible Woman character at some point, or maybe if they hadn't already put Jamil Al Jamil in it, something like a Titania. That seems like a character I cannot wait to see that tomorrow. But
Yeah. I
that's when we're
love
recording this.
Jamila. I love
But
Jamila. She's a great human being.
but
Um,
Titania is a fun character. I can't wait to see what
yeah.
she does with it
Yeah.
because that's just a crazy thing to try and do.
Yeah. It's great. It's great.
Um, Well, okay. We always end up with just a couple of questions that kind of have nothing to do with anything because, well, that's how we roll.
Love it.
Uh, but so I'll ask the three questions we pull out of a pool of a handful, but
Okay.
we usually ask about pizza. Everybody
Uh-huh.
loves pudding. Well, everybody loves pizza for the most part too,
For sure.
but there are so many kinds. What kind
Yes.
of a pizza person are you?
Oh boy, yeah. I mean, I'm pretty boring. I am definitely one of those I mean, there are just so many like tall women who have Hashimoto, which is a thyroid disease, which and you can't have gluten. And I will say my sisters, I don't know why so many of you are tall. I'm not sure where we all got that, if that's like a Scandinavian thing. I don't even think I have any Scandinavian in me, but and by the way, also shout out to all the not so tall women who also have it. It is a very common thing, but you can't have gluten. So I have not had gluten, as part of my diet for like almost 20 years now. And pizza has only gotten better. It's gotten better and better and better and better. But it was one of the things that I feel like they did a great job with early on in the beginnings of, oh, shoot, gluten hurts some people. I love a good rice crust. I had a pizza. I mean, my go-to tomato sauce, kind of like a little bit of an acid reflux thing happening. Not sure what's going on with that, but so I haven't been having a lot of tomato stuff or salsa stuff, which is a bummer because I love salsa. But um, so I tend to lean more towards the what kind of flatbready kind of pizza effect can we do like a prosciutto and arugula and like some maybe there's an artichoke heart or I don't know
A little pesto.
but I don't need I can do like if it's just cheese and like olive oil on a crust, that's great. So I don't need I don't need that side, but I also don't want the heavy the white sauce. I don't even need that. Like I love bread so much that I really want to be able to taste the crust. So I would say that's it. All that being said, my sweetie and I had a pizza in Toronto that nope, I'm sorry, it was in Calgary. That was, I think, the best pizza I've ever had. And it had there was like a little bit of maple syrup that was in there, very little. So just a hint of maple syrup, but it did also have like the salty was happening. And it was so like addictively good. And I would never have thought like, yeah, please put a little maple syrup in my pizza, but boy, was it good. And it was like smoky cheese. You know what I mean? It was like a smoked mozzarella, and maybe it's like a smoked Gouda or something. So the smokiness and the sweetness was just, oh, it was so good.
I'm glad I already had dinner. I think I'd be hungry already.
Yeah, I know. I'm very sad that I can't access that pizza on a regular basis. It's a long way
Okay.
from Calgary.
Well, we'll get away from the stomach for a moment and we'll go. So you were in a band, which means that I assume music has a certain resonance and importance to you.
For sure.
Do you have a favorite band? And if not a favorite band, a favorite genre that just kind of energizes you and gets you into the headspace that you love to be in?
Oh boy. Something that energizes me. I listen to a lot of fairly soft music these days, which is sort of funny because that's not how I used to be. But um, so the thing that springs to mind because it's like on my mind now is not particularly energizing at all, but which is that I just love Jose Gonzalez so much, and he does a lot of stuff with like big orchestras and stuff. But I love him. When I listen to his music, I feel like okay, some of us are trying to heal the world, like like it's not we should no people aren't necessarily giving up, even if they are writing songs that sort of feel like like, oh, the humanity, like that's sort of like no, like not turning away from how broken we are, but also kind of like holding that little hope that, like we can make music, we can make art, we can heal each other, we can be kind, like, is it all for naught, So I feel like I've been in that mode a lot because of, COVID and all that. And I'm going to see him. I've seen him several times, and I'm always just like, I just always feel like, oh yeah, maybe things will be okay when he plays. As far as like just like getting up and like get like, I almost said boogieing, and that's not something that anyone from our generation or any generation like after our parents, maybe our parents would say. I'm trying to think of like what I really get into, and I am drawing a complete and total blank, but that doesn't mean that I just like sit and, sit by a window in the rain like looking out longingly. That's not
That
necessarily true
sounds like
either.
Enya there. But
Yeah. I mean, I love Frightened Rabbit. That used to be my go-to, but it's always tinged with a little sadness because the lead singer committed suicide. So it's like the songs that used to make me like, we got this. Now I'm like, um, I'm gonna stay around for you, buddy.
yeah,
So
next.
yeah.
Uh, okay. Well, how about this? You you've been around a lot of games, a lot of video games, uh, a lot of like I said, a lot of those niche sort of fan pockets. Are there any of those items that you've come across that you go, man, I really wish that would get adapted into a show or a
Oh
movie?
gosh. Yeah. I mean, I usually go the opposite way because I love animation so much that I'm trying to think of, because a lot of the time it goes into, then it becomes like we're going to do a human cast and then a bunch of CG, and I don't necessarily always love that. Um because I do love animation so much, and I feel like its ability to do certain things and touch certain people and like be universal in it this really special way is very cool and very exciting. I'm trying to think if there's anything. I mean, I think the main thing that I like is like kind of immersive stuff. But I like actual brick and mortar immersive stuff because I feel like we have access to so much VR and so much CG, and like I sort of I like understand the landscape of that and on a level that's like not as exciting anymore, if that makes sense. Like seeing the new, like seeing, and I'm sure it's great, but like seeing the trailer for example, the Jero Tokun, the new Amazon
Right.
Prime
Mhm.
adaptation. Like I've seen those CG waterfalls so many times now. I'm
Right.
not filled with wonder. Do you know what I mean? I'm just not. But if I walk into a place like Burnt City, or which is a immersive theater in London, or Sleep No More, which is the same company that does stuff in New York, and they have meticulously assembled real physical objects that you can pick up, and you genuinely feel like, where am I? That is very exciting to me, which means I also like a good escape room.
That does make sense. Well, I just can't I cannot express my thanks enough for you to take the time to
Oh, it's my
talk with me
pleasure.
today.
I'm
I
glad we
hope,
finally got to do it. I know we were back and forth on with traveling and COVID and many other things, so but I knew it would happen.
yeah, and I just I'm going to be probably giddy for the next day or two, and that's my
Ride it.
favorite part of doing this.
Ride that wave,
That's
even as
right.
your son is strangling you.
Well, I'll ride it as long as I can maintain enough oxygen to my brain.
Please
But
make sure that's happening.
don't forget, dear folks, to check out uh, all of the amazing work that Janet has done. I feel like she has about 7 different podcasts that she is running right now. What what is coming up in, say, like Braving the Elements? Do you have anything that you can tell us?
Oh gosh. I mean, I love doing that podcast so much. I do that with Dante Bosco, who plays Zuko in the original Avatar series. We've been unpacking the all of Avatar, starting with book one. Now we're in book two. Um, yeah, I mean, I I love where we have some more fan episodes coming up. Those are always such a treat. And but yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of like we definitely are a few episodes out. I'm trying to think of if there's anything that I can really say. Uh, I love Erica Ishii. Speaking of like video game folks. And so having her on the podcast, which is coming up with, we have her on for the chase, was like such a dream. And that's a perfect example of like the like cross fangirling. It was a perfect example of me being like, I just love you, and her being like, I just love you, and Dante being like, y'all love each other. I get it. But yeah, so that's a fun one coming up. She's amazing.
Do you have any other projects that we should be keeping our eyes out for?
Well, I just finished doing a recurring role on a really fun show that's going to be, I don't know when it comes out on Apple TV, but it stars Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne, and it's called Platonic. And it's about two old friends who really never have had anything between them. Like when Harry Met Sally is the lying version of that, like they actually fell in love. This is like not that, but everyone sort of assumes that there must be something there, and like sort of how they navigate their renewed friendship with the way their lives have changed as adults. And I get to play a wild character in that was just so fun. I don't know when it comes out, but keep your ears and eyes peeled. I'm sure there will be promo for it, since it's Seth and Rose and they're both big stars. But
Yeah,
it was so much fun.
that sounds awesome. Well, thank you
Yeah.
again for
Yeah,
sharing
thank
yourself
you,
with
Ken.
us.
My
And
pleasure.
and if you ever want to come back on the show and just tell us about something awesome that's coming up, or just completely take over the podcast and talk about, I don't know, video games or whatever,
Great.
that's also fine. But
Will do.
thank you.
Thanks again.